Well, one of the hardest parts of it, and I know this because I've heard it from many biotech execs, many biotech founders, is that one of the hardest parts is integrating the talent, right? Like making. I've had a lot of biotech execs tell me that discovery and design are easy compared to finding computational biology talent, integrating that talent into more traditional scientific environments. Simple suggestions, as simple as like, yeah, we hired some computational biologists and we made them sit in the same room as our wet lab scientists. And there was friction, there was angst, until they learned each other's language, right? I'm curious about your takes on that, because you both come to it from more of a technical perspective. I often hear from the biology perspective, like how do we get these tech people integrated into our program? So from your perspectives, how is you're both leaders of your companies, how is the marriage of these two worlds best managed? Tina, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I've had a lot of learning and unlearning along these lines, and one of my best advice I could give if somebody is kind of early founding and building a company, you will spend more time on culture and figuring out how to grow this tech and biotech community side by side than you could ever imagine, right? And it is absolutely critical to culturally meld. Even simple things like the lexicon, like what a product manager is in one industry is different than what a product manager or a program or a project manager is in the other industry. And there's a million examples of that. And truly what we do here at Recursion, we actually are incredibly intentional that we have roughly the same amount of computational engineers, scientists as life scientists, and increasingly as many folks at the intersection of those two as possible. But we're not a biotech company that hires some tech people. We're not a tech company that hires some biotech people. We have those in equal balance, and that means just the language, even how we speak about things, how we construct career paths and promotion ladders, how we set up interaction and set up our work processes, set up our teams. There's a lot of intentionality in every single kind of like team, the way we construct and operate the company, and it has to keep those things in balance. You have to equally respect your tech folks as your biotech folks, and not give too much power to one or the other, or not use language from one industry and not the industry. I think you just have to really build side by side at every level so that everybody can kind of be welcomed in and bring their perspective to bear. And that is a much, much harder thing. I came here from a small biotech company. We had, everybody kind of spoke the same language. Like when you say something, for example, DMPK, everybody in the biotech industry knows what DMPK is. Nobody in the tech industry knows what DMPK is. And so, that's an example of, you can't just go up in front of all hands and say, okay, we got this DMPK results. You have to explain that and create a lexicon for it that's accessible to everybody.
Yeah. Andrew, thoughts on that?
I think it's important to have translators, right? Like
translators. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're sort of the people that speak both sides, but well enough that they can analogize or simplify something like DMPK to a technologist, right? In a perspective that they understand, in a language that they speak, right? Can you explain DMPK through an algorithmic process, through some simple analogy, right? Oftentimes when I'm explaining to people that don't know anything about the biotech industry about, antibodies binding to a target and represented disease, I use the lock and key example or the house mechanism. And so having people that understand it and can communicate it, not just in a sort of a simple language, but also in the language of, the other domain, right? If you're trying to explain an algorithmic concept like NP complete to a biologist, it's there's some complexity there. And so how do you explain that? And vice versa, if you're trying to explain, the difference between binding and function, on rates and off rates to a technologist, how do you do that? Having a translator actually, I think, helps a lot, but those are very rare individuals. And so you oftentimes want those people spending a lot of time doing productive work, but productive work is building the culture, right? Building the bridges. When I was in undergrad, it was all, or grad school as well, it was like, the MBAs were like, oh, the engineers are just tools to use, and the engineers were like, oh, the MBAs are just, you know, like full of hot air and can't actually do anything. And once you get them together in a room and have them speaking about a problem through the lens of product, then you get into sort of this alignment. And I think that having like, that's where a product manager comes into play. It's great. They're in essence a translator in that space. So I think it's important to have that person in between, in addition to what Tina said about building a culture around balance, right? That saying one side is not more powerful than the other. Otherwise, your technologists end up being treated like they're the IT department, which is not what you want.
Right.
Or you treat the, you know, people work in the lab like they're lab rats, right? Also what you don't want.